Let him play with the kitten! They brought a pet.
I was 30 hours into Final Fantasy XVI when it happened. The euphoric realization that Naoki Yoshida and his team have somehow crafted a game that's unlike any Final Fantasy you've played before, with influences ranging from Game of Thrones to God of War, yet at the same time still feels unmistakably Final Fantasy. Which is a confusing sentence to start off this video, I know, but give me 15 minutes and I'll explain. In many ways, Final Fantasy XVI is very un-Final Fantasy. It's got lots of swearing, for one.
F*** off.
With F-bombs dropping at a frequency that would have even Final Fantasy VII's Barret and Cid washing their mouths out. But to be fair, when you look at what goes down in the world of Valisthea, these are the kind of things swearing was invented for. The brutal murder of innocent villagers by Imperial scumbags.
Remember our orders? No survivors!
A deadly blight draining life and colour from the land, and mountain-sized godfolk pummeling the snot out of each other while you're trying to go about your business. You try running through a canyon of exploding ice and rock without swearing and see how far you get. Fiddle-dee-dee! This is the kind of expression you can expect plastered across your own face when you play Final Fantasy XVI. It's a breathless rush of twists, betrayals, and narrative rug pulls, punctuated by boss fights and set pieces of eye-melting spectacle. But these moments aren't just Creative Business Unit 3 flexing their game dev biceps, although they are a little bit that. No, as explosive as the graphical fireworks are, it's the dramatic story beats over which they burst that make this game truly memorable. You know, I'm a crusty old cynic these days, but there were moments in Final Fantasy XVI where, despite myself, I just had to cheer. Don't worry, there will be no story spoilers in this video, but what I will say is these epic battles and story moments are as anime as it gets. As a decades-long Final Fantasy fan, I've got a bit of a sweet tooth for the series' patented brand of histrionic melodrama, and so slurped up the sugary delights of Final Fantasy XVI's teary childhood promises, sashaying pantomime backstabbers, and screaming oaths of vengeance like a kid who's just walked into a fridge full of J2O.
Take your hands off my brother!
Oh, inject it into me. The fact these scenes are presented in such imaginative, epic fashion is just a bonus, really, but what a bonus. I mentioned God of War as a comparison earlier, and this is why. The lavish production values when you're going toe-to-toe with a pivotal boss, or duking it out in the much-publicised icon versus icon mega battles, are so unapologetically over the top, you'll wonder how your TV doesn't go supernova. When married to Masayoshi Soken's rousing score, these are gameplay sequences so powerfully emotive you'll remember them for years to come. But if the set pieces are the lofty mountain peaks of Final Fantasy XVI, it's the surrounding landscape from which they tower that forms the bedrock of the game. Valisthea is a brutal world, an unforgiving medieval fantasy built from blood, dirt and steel. The Game of Thrones vibes are strong, from the broad strokes of the Red Wedding-inspired prologue, which you'll have experienced yourself if you've played the demo, right down to the sickening sense of foreboding you feel right after making friends with literally anyone who lives in a ramshackle village under the nose of the Empire. Again, no spoilers, but try not to get too attached to any of the NPCs. Which is easier said than done, thanks in part to the cohesive, believable world Square Enix has built, one of mud, overcast skies and regional British accents, but also the voice acting, which I'm going to single out as one of my favourite aspects of the entire game. I can't get enough of it. I love speaking to people in Final Fantasy XVI. Even if I am being unceremoniously told where to go by a potty-mouthed botanist, There's a satisfying sense of place here that many games don't get right. Final Fantasy XVI nails it. This is a bleak, war-torn land populated by the scared, the selfish, the heroic, and the oppressed, all of whom are brought to life with rare warmth and authenticity.
Wasn't so long ago us old hands were ratting about the place like peas in a bucket.
I didn't understand a word he said. This world feels so alive. There's a whiff of The Witcher 3's Velen about Valisthea. It's in the bleak beauty of everything. It's in the tumultuous always war between fickle neighbouring states indifferent to the suffering of their downtrodden populace. And it's in squelching round the place as a gravel-voiced badass with a really big sword. Basically, I love being in this world. I love drifting through its towns and taverns, catching wafts of idle NPC conversation. I love the fact there's not always a happy ending to the multiple side quests, that do an admirable job of enriching the story, by the way. I love keeping track of all the political toing and froing as Final Fantasy XVI's nations war it out with each other. And I love the ATL, or Active Time Law, which helps you do just that. I use this in pretty much every cutscene. Hit the touchpad at any time and the game pauses, offering a summary of who's who, what's what and where's where that updates in real time as the story progresses. It literally changes mid-cutscene as characters and places are named for the first time. Later on you can go even further and access the State of the Realm, a beautiful interactive map that lets you flick through and read up on the events of the story so far. Some appreciation for whoever made that map, because it is unnecessarily good. In fact, it goes straight to the top of my list of best video game in-game lore glossary things. There it is, look, at number 1. By virtue of it being the only in-game lore glossary thing good enough to make me think of them as a thing I should be ranking. But yes, this is an unforgiving, brutal and violent fantasy. A seismic tonal shift from the anthropomorphized hippo children fantasy of 9 or the sparkling sci-fi of 13. If I had to sum up the vibe of 16 in one image, it would be this one of Clive's Chocobo Ambrosia, a no-nonsense war chicken with an armoured eye patch who's more likely to gouge your face off with her leathery talons than prance about making cute quack noises. This is Final Fantasy with the gloves off, especially when it comes to that one crucial element that forms the gameplay backbone of every title in the series: the combat. Now, Final Fantasy has flirted with real-time combat for years, but this is properly it. Diving in at the deep end, command menu armbands tossed to the side of the pool. It may seem like a jilting leap to the action RPG dark side for staunch fans of traditional turn-based combat, but for me, this feels like the decisive plunge the series has needed to take for a while now, and the only realistic way Final Fantasy XVI could truly realise its lofty cinematic ambition. Yes, it's a break from those JRPG roots, but Final Fantasy has always been the genre's rebellious child, restlessly innovating and risk-taking, writhing free of expectations, and in my opinion, this is the freshest, most satisfying combat system we've seen yet. Under the guidance of former Devil May Cry developer Ryota Suzuki, fights in 16 are sharp and stylish, Clive dashing through enemies with a grace Dante himself would be proud of. There's even a Stinger-style lunge performed using square and X that I definitely don't spam the entire time. Shut up. Unlike Dante, though, Clive is blessed with the magic of various icons, and it's here you can go deep with your combat build. As the story progresses, Clive's repertoire expands, giving him access to a suite of elemental attacks you can execute via a hotkey system. Think God of War's runic abilities, but with even more pyrotechnics. You can shift between icons with a quick press of L2, giving you scope to combine the abilities of multiple icons with pleasingly explosive results. Upgrade and master these abilities with ability points accrued during battle or by completing side quests, and you can assign them to Clive even if you haven't equipped the respective icon. In short, come the end game, Clive is bristling with a kaleidoscope of powers you can essentially hand-pick, giving you a tantalising amount of freedom for creating your own unique combat build. Personally, I'm all about abilities that quickly drive up the enemy's stagger bar, combined with accessories that increase the speed at which my limit gauge fills. Deploy icon abilities, stagger enemy, initiate limit break, go wild, win. That's how I like to play it. Quick, aggressive, and with loads of precision dodging. It's the kind of battle system that eases you in, guides you up a gentle learning curve, and then, at some point around hour 25, you realise you've gone from a leaping, slashing whippersnapper to a walking act of God. There's an awesome sense of power you'll feel once you've mastered the combat that makes every boss encounter properly box office. Especially satisfying is how the depths of Clive's combat abilities unravel in tandem with the gradual opening of Final Fantasy XVI's world. This isn't a sandbox like 15, more a series of branching interconnected areas that reach across the continents of Ash and Storm, filled with monster bounties and side quests, and anchored by a central hub hideaway where Clive can access the aforementioned State of the Realm map, along with a blacksmith, item shop, and various other RPG essentials. There's scope for exploration here, sure, but Final Fantasy XVI's focus is absolutely story and combat. But back to that central paradox from the start of the video. How can Final Fantasy XVI be unlike any Final Fantasy you've played before, but also be the Final Fantasyest Final Fantasy at the same time? Well, I'm about to tell you, and it's gonna get a bit cheesy, so make sure you're sitting down. Like, what makes Final Fantasy Final Fantasy? Structurally, narratively, combatally, this is a series that never stays where you left it. You can't say Final Fantasy is defined by any particular battle system, or even by the inclusion of ever-present fan-favourite elements like icons, chocobos, or moogles. I mean, those are things that will always make me smile, but they're not the essence. Final Fantasy XVI even pays homage to the series' formative years, with the pixelated versions of Clive and co appearing on your save file, evoking the graphical style of the original games. And there's that iconic spritzy tinkle of the progress bar whenever you speak to Lore Master Harpocrates that, whenever I hear it, instantly whips me back to the late 90s Ratatouille style. But that's not it either. For me, the magic of Final Fantasy has always been in the characters and the story. That's what I remember. Cecil and Terra and Cloud and Squall, Zidane, Tidus, Lightning and Vaan. That's why this series has been and will always be my absolute favourite. Because there's something in the bond between party members and between those characters and the player that digs deep. And Final Fantasy XVI has, in my opinion, the most likeable cast of characters since Final Fantasy IX. I love Cid. I flippin' love him. Ralph Ineson turns in a performance that crackles with charisma, and I want Cid to come and rescue me and say, "All right, love," in that impossible to impersonate smoky northern drawl of his.
You two behave now.
Jill is cool as hell with a past as tortured and complex as anyone's, and Torgal is the goodest pupper 14 out of 10. That's the kind of nonsense you lot like to say, isn't it? Yes, you can press X to pet him. And Clive, let's just say Clive goes on one heck of a journey throughout Final Fantasy XVI. You're in control of him for over half his life, and he goes through the emotional ringer, actor Ben Starr giving a performance that's raw and vulnerable, while also nailing the best cool protagonist growl this side of Geralt.
And here I was thinking I was the uncertain one.
I love this cast, and I am invested in their story to the point where I'm struggling to think about anything else. Final Fantasy has a new shell, but its heart is beating hotter than ever with Final Fantasy XVI. This is a dazzling adventure with which I am utterly obsessed, and I apologise in advance for the amount of times I'll be talking about it from now on. I can't wait to hear what you make of it. Please share your thoughts in the comments, give this video a like if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe to Access for more Final Fantasy content, and I can promise there will be lots more in the future. Thanks for watching, and catch you again soon.